Today, I'll be covering Roblox games that were extremely popular but are now forgotten. Stay tuned to see if you remember any of these. And also please subscribe. Let's start with the controversial one. I put out a tweet asking this, and the answer I got a lot was Piggy. Now, I can see where people are coming from, because every month Piggy has been constantly losing players. But also, Piggy doesn't really update anymore. It's actually not going to have any more big updates. The game was bound to lose players. But the thing is, I wouldn't say it fell off completely. It still gets 20 to 30,000 players, which is impressive. And speaking of controversial, another one people kept bringing up is Mape City. An absolute massive game, one of the biggest actually, sitting at 14.7 billion visits. And obviously, a lot of people think the game's been dying out ever since parties got removed, which was a pretty integral part of the game. But I don't agree with this one at all. Let's look at the stats. Parties were removed in February this year, and at that time they were around 50 to 60,000 active players. And now they do around 35,000 active players, which is a big drop, but 35,000 consistently is still crazy. And also, as we can see, after parties were removed, the game was literally in its peak for the year, so it's doing just fine. And our last two games for the controversial section is Roblox High School 1 and 2. 1 has 1.2 billion visits, but only 1,500 active. And 2 has 500 million visits and 3,000 active, which once again isn't bad, but they don't hold up like they used to. And I feel like it's just because they're kinda old and considered as classic games. And the whole genre of roleplay games keep getting bigger and bigger and more competitive. Look at Brookhaven for example. But like I said, they're not completely dead. Let's move on to our next section though, which is kinda tiny. It's prison games. More specifically, Redwood Prison, Prison Life, and Prison Break. Prison Life's still not doing that bad, but the other two, not so much. And the reason for all these declining, I feel like it just has to be Jailbreak. Jailbreak wasn't the first prison game. Prison Life was actually like a precursor to it, but Jailbreak was just different, and its popularity put it above the rest. But finally, let's move to our last section, which are games that are completely dead, and some of these have crazy backstories. Let's start though with the absolute classic, Catalog Heaven. This game was huge, especially a few years ago. It was good to try on items, but a lot of people actually just played it to mess around. But now it only has like 10 to 30 active players, which I think the reason for this is that most people probably just play it for like 3 seconds to check an item, rather than actually playing the game. Because since the game's super old, the gameplay is still pretty old, and nothing is too crazy. And stuff like this is not what people really enjoy anymore, especially with how much Roblox games have evolved. And another classic game is actually Bubblegum Simulator. Another just massive game. And it still has a few hundred, but nowhere what it used to be. And I also feel like no one talks about this game anymore. Like I kind of forgot it existed. And another game you might have forgotten is Chizeled. This game absolutely blew up, especially with the rise of Fortnite. And it also became kind of a trend for people to play and call it Roblox Fortnite. But this game is kind of hopping on a trend. And Fortnite is obviously still pretty popular, but not at like its peak. So this game just slowly faded away. And let's get into our second last game, which are Ripple mini games. It doesn't have much active players anymore. And the story for this one's actually pretty insane. It actually goes pretty deep, but a TLDR is basically the owner got his account deleted on purpose and kind of left the whole Roblox scene, since they got exposed for not paying clients. I made a whole video going deep into this, which you should watch after if you want more details. And obviously with the owner's account being gone, no one's working on the game, so it just sits there with no updates, slowly declining. And finally let's get to our last game, which is Timmy by KreekCraft. And it has 0 players as I'm recording this, and he only averages a few players every day. And if you don't know the story, you're probably wondering how can someone like KreekCraft let this game die? And well, it isn't really his fault. Kreek worked on more of the story of this game, and the developing side of this was Wonderworks. And sadly, they decided to discontinue it. And since the game ended so quickly, there's not much content in the game for players to keep going back to, which is why it's just completely dead. Which is super sad since so much was put into this, but it happens, you know. If you enjoyed, check out this video where a popular game may have broke the rules, and I'll see you in the next one.